You're listening to the Light Novel Podcast. Visit us online at lightnovelpodcast.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Light Novel Podcast. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Saga of Tanya the Evil. And so many other pieces of news that, that's just going to take a long time. I am Justus R, and with me tonight, I have Flyz.
Yo, what up?
I've got Jean-Luc.
Hi, everyone.
Jean-Luc returning from after, I don't know, it's been a long time, dude, since you've been on one of these.
Yeah, it's work of hell.
I have Kyle.
Hola.
Mirage is joining us.
Good morning.
Just for reference sake, Mirage is waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to do this recording because he's way on like a different part of the world than the rest of us. And I have Terrence.
Good evening.
So let's give a little hand to Mirage. Thank you, Mirage, for joining us. Yes, okay. That's dedication, folks. That's dedication. All right, let's get right to it. So, first of all, the news. I'll do like the silly little bits that nobody cares about first. Well, I don't know. Somebody might care, so I shouldn't say that. But anyway, Wolf and Parchment, the sequel to Spice and Wolf, is getting a manga.
We'll excited.
Just move on ahead. Also, in terms of licenses for manga, and I'm just including these because they are actually light novels, J-Novel Club is going to be putting out the light novels for the Faraway Paladin, which is a really good light novel that, actually, funny enough, we were all just saying that we want to do an episode on. They have also picked up the Unwanted Undead Adventurer manga, which is another light novel series that they publish. Couple of little things that came out of J-Novel Club. They are going to be releasing Ascendance of a Bookworm in print. They will also they will also be releasing An Archdemon's Dilemma: How to Love Your Elf Bride in print. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to be releasing Full Metal Panic and another one that we'll talk about in a minute. They are classic series. They're actually releasing them in triple volume hardcover omnibus editions.
Jeez.
Wow.
Like they're going all out on these puppies. Like not only anonymous, not only omnibus editions, but hardcover too.
That's going to be a $40 light novel.
Yeah.
But you know what, though, man? Like, I'm blowing, like, I mean, of course, you guys have American prices, but, like, Jean-Luc and I are dropping easy $15 to $20 a bloody volume for, you know, a single volume. If it costs me...
hardcover goes to 40 and plus.
Yeah, honestly, if I drop 40 bones and I get 3 light novels and it's a hardcover, I'll consider that a deal. It's sad to live in Canada. Anyway.
I don't even bother
It's
getting
cold.
hardcovers because I don't even know what the shipping would cost over here.
Oh, well, that's fair enough, man. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, those will be coming out. Let's get right to... so we got to talk about this one for a minute. So J.K. Haru is a sex worker in another world, is getting a manga adaptation. And also J-Novel Club is releasing it in paperback in July. That's
spicy.
Yeah, we'll maybe do a podcast on that one later on when the print editions come out. It is an interesting book. I'm not sure how they're going to do a manga.
I'm scared.
I just kind of think it's going to be a lot of cutaways to facial expressions or shadows or shapes. Like I don't know. If it gets explicit, I'm going to be very, very surprised.
Censorship.
They can make it like the Goblin Slayer manga and make it as racy as possible.
Well, I mean, they don't. The whole thing is like the Goblin Slayer manga took the light novel and made it racier. The manga does not have to make the source material racier with J.K. Haru. It can just adapt it word for word, and it'll be plenty hentai enough. Anyway, yeah. So that'll be very interesting, to say the least. Yes. Let us just say though, the book is a lot better than the title would have you believe. Okay. Also, the new 12 Kingdoms. 12 Kingdoms, a very classic light novel series that, of course, we probably will never get in English because that's just how it is. Apparently, they're getting 4 new volumes, and that's the first new material in 6 years. There's a lot of this stuff kind of happening.
So in Japan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Slayers came back.
Yep, Slayers came back. I'm sure there's at least another 1 or 2 that I've read.
I know there were some that got weird additions like Boogie Pop and Haruhi Suzumiya.
Oh, well, actually, Haruhi Suzumiya is, yes, they are releasing it in more of a adult styled paperback. I think that's probably because they figure that the fans of Haruhi are now adults and they're hoping to market to them. But there have been there has been new material of Haruhi, but it's all been like bonus material in like other magazines or stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know if the author's just teasing that there is finally going to be some new stuff there or what. But it seems to be a thing that's happening more and more. Like you said, like Slayers did this, that the older series are coming back. So
I just looked up. The English publisher is Tokyo Pop. So
yeah. Of
which one?
Didn't we
for 12 Kingdoms?
12 Kingdoms.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So that's dead.
Well,
we just got a rescue. Yeah.
I was gonna say J Novel Club rescued Full Metal Panic.
Full Metal Panic was
Yeah, it was a Tokyo
maybe.
Pop.
I have the first 4 volumes on my shelf in hardcover. Back then I did import them. So maybe.
Yeah.
If any series is worth rescuing, it's 12 Kingdoms. It's one of my favorite anime of all time. And the novels are great too.
Well, Seven Seas is announcing something tomorrow, so we can cross our fingers for something good, hopefully.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think, because here's my thing. It's not that I don't think Seven Seas can get big titles. I mean, my God, like they got Mushoku Tensei, they got Classroom of the Elite, like they've picked up a lot of big stuff. Don't get me wrong. But Anime Expo is happening the first week of July.
Yeah.
And so I cannot imagine that only a month ahead of AX, they are going to announce some like mind-blowing title that fans have been going cuckoo for. I mean, and again, this is just my guess. But I'm kind of like, when we look historically at the kind of stuff that got announced at Anime Expo last year, I mean, there was some, that was where they dropped the big bombs, right? So I can't imagine. I mean, it's not like they're going to come out tomorrow and be like, hey, we licensed this little title called Date Alive. You know what I mean? Like that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's
maybe 12 Kingdoms is not so popular that it could be, but I still don't believe Seven Seas.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a little like a single novel or like something small. You would think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so too. And speaking of licenses, there's been a couple of them actually since we last spoke. First off, a couple from Yen On. First off, they got a light novel called You Call That Service? When a vampire kingdom suddenly appears within the borders of Japan, a beautiful boy meets vampire girl romantic comedy blossoms. So that's the thing.
So anime Twilight.
So
Got it.
service in the sense of fan service, or service in the sense of running a hotel?
To be fair, this one is actually written by the same author as I've been killing slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. So I have to think that Killing Slimes must have been doing some either banner business for Yen On, or their licensing partner there is like, we want you to pimp all of this author's novels, because they have licensed everything by this author so far, like anything that's recent, this one, that Nobunaga one that we talked about last episode, of course, Killing Slimes, it's this person's like the new Reiki Kawahara, if they write it, we'll publish it in English, it seems. I don't know.
And I don't think this is going to be the last like undead romantic story that you get to in this list. So.
Oh no, there's lots of undeadness going on. The other
Overlord.
the other one that they licensed, and actually I'm kind of excited for this one. It is In the Eminence in Shadow. Just like how everyone adored heroes in their childhood, a certain young man adored those powers hidden in shadows. After hiding his strength and living the mediocre life of a mob character by day while undergoing frenzied training by night, he finally reincarnates into a different world and gains ultimate power. The young man who is only playing at being a power in the shadows, his misunderstanding subordinates, and a giant organization in the shadows that gets trampled. This is the story of a young boy who had adored powers and shadows, possibly, eventually, reigning over the world of shadows in another world. That's from Light Novel novel updates. You know what?
I think you had that in the top 10 recently.
Yes, and actually, here's the thing. So, because I read that and I was kind of like in the top 10, I said to people, I'm like, what the hell is this really about? Because this does not sound like it makes sense. And so,
too much shadow in the description. I'm all confused.
Well, I mean, essentially, it sounds like it's a mafia thing, right? Like, or like, assassins, or it's like he's basically enamored with these things that work behind the scenes, like those sort of dark kind of organizations that are secret and they play and pull strings and everything else, but they hide in the shadows. That's the kind of thing that they're talking about. And I guess he becomes reincarnated in this other world. And it's kind of like, somebody said it was kind of like with Ainz and the followers of Nazarick, where this guy sometimes just blunders something out of his mouth and his followers are like, oh my God, Sugoi, you're so amazing. And they actually go and they do it. So apparently it's a bit of a comedy.
Yeah, the main character is essentially just a big chuny. And so he's just spouting BS left and right. And, everybody that hears him, his small little group, they just take it as gospel. And so he says, oh, my eye aches. I feel some dark tremors out of the east or something. And so this group goes out to the east. They start digging around. It's like, oh, hey, here's a secret organization of assassins. Let's wipe them out. And he just keeps Forrest Gumping his way through just all these assassination plots, secret organizations. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And like I said, and what's funny is that first I thought, is this like some kind of dark series? Like, I will operate from the shadows. But nope, apparently, it's just a big comedy where Chuni gets to kind of see things through. I'm looking forward to checking it out, actually. It sounds pretty entertaining. And then we got a whole bunch of stuff. Well, I'll do the Cross Infinite World one first, talking about undead. So Cross Infinite World is going to release a book called Another World's Zombie Apocalypse Is Not My Problem.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a standalone novel. This is what they have for the synopsis. Just when I thought navigating high school was bad enough, I woke up to a rotting post-apocalyptic world. I thought that the poisonous swamp surrounding my small island would have protected me from all the drama. But what did I see staggering my way? A nasty, putrid zombie. With nothing left to lose, I shoved it away. To my surprise, it turned into a living, breathing, not-so-dead human. So I have the power to purify zombies, and now I'm expected to save this undead world from the zombie apocalypse? great. This is so not my problem.
Okay.
And apparently the
So
zombies.
this one is truly a standalone.
It's a standalone,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a single release, yeah.
And I saw some of the images, and it looks like a lot of the zombies she pushes away to turn human again, or hot guys, of course.
Yeah. It looks, yeah. There's gonna be, yeah.
Cross Infinite Worlds. Okay.
All right. Yeah. What can I tell you? Speaking of Seven Seas licenses, they licensed a whole bunch of manga not too long ago, but there was one light novel in the whole thing. SCP Foundation, Iris of the Mirror World. A young man is encountering a strange phenomenon. The same photo of a girl appears inside any book he opens. One book in the library causes him to be whisked away by the SCP Foundation, a secret organization dedicated to containing anomalous entities and phenomena. There, he learns that the girl's name is Iris, and that he's going to have to work alongside her to get them both out. Now this, you know what? I know nothing about this. It is like it says it's a collaborative fiction project. And then it says it's enjoyed around the world. And I'm like, funny, because I've never...
Someone did at
heard of
least
it.
kind of link me to, like, there's a website you can go to. It's like a wiki with, like,
Oh, yeah.
all these different stories of these, like, I think they're creatures or, like under or like secret government experiments. I don't know, but it's basically this whole like world that people have created with different types of stories about these monsters or creatures or whatever it is. Again, I don't know all the specifics of it, but yeah, it's totally like open. And I guess this is a big thing with this is someone said this was a interesting license to pick up, because it could be open to like being, taken for free use by other people. Because I guess this SCP thing is totally like fair use or free to use. I don't know what they call it. I don't know what the specific terminology is, but it's basically like anybody can make an SCP thing, but nobody can actually claim that it's copyrighted or whatever. So
Well, I think what we would probably find is that the specific story itself could be copyrighted. In fact, I'm pretty sure, I know this one was released in Japan by an actual publisher. So the story itself, but I think what they're saying is the ideas, like the world, the monsters, all that kind of stuff, is fair use.
yeah.
Yeah, and as I understand it, it's kind of, somebody told me it was sort of like a X-Files slash like, well, I mean, a little bit more active in actually containing monsters than the X-Files, but sort of that idea, right? Like there's all these mysterious things going on in the world, and these people investigate and contain and destroy. And...
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while, so I could be totally wrong. But it kind of reminds me of like Torchwood. I don't know if anybody ever watched that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably closer to that. Yeah. So that is a thing that they have licensed. It is kind of an interesting license because it's very kind of odd.
It reminds me a bit of the 1632 series. That's also some kind of open source story which everyone can contribute to. About a small American town that gets plugged by a cosmic catastrophe into the Germany of 1632 during the 30 Years' War.
Oh. Huh. Weird. Okay. Well, this is something new to me. I don't know much about it, but it is kind of an interesting license. It's a funny thing with Seven Seas, right? They come out with some big heavy hitter like Classroom of the Elite, and then they're like, oh, by the way, we licensed the Evangelion light novels that came out 20 years ago. It's like, that's cool. I'm cool with that, but it's just weird. Like, where did that come from? Anyway, and then there's a whack ton. There's like 5 announcements from J Novel Club. Number 1 was middle-aged businessman makes a name for himself in another world thanks to goddess power. Apparently, it's
I want to read it.
it's a 2-volume series, centers on Shozo Onigawara, whose life completely changes after he meets a goddess one day. He used to have no real potential at work, but after meeting her, he moves up the corporate ladder, gets married, and has 3 daughters. One day, all 5 family members are transported to another world, and Sozo must find a way to provide for and protect his family. He joins a small adventurers guild with a plan of making the guild more successful, using the business skills he cultivated in Japan and the power he obtains from the goddess.
So this one was one of my... I think we did the anime expo, like the guesses from like a year ago. I think I mentioned this one in there. Is
this the one with the house?
This is the one where the house gets transported with the family, and it's the one where the goddess and him, they're getting together is the source of his power. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is that
Getting
one,
together?
full family transfer. Yep.
Well, okay. All right. Okay.
So
Sam
does this
must
count as a point for you, even though it's a year late?
Yeah.
right.
This-
I'll give you that.
This was one that I requested on the forum, and I was hoping for it, but I did not think they're gonna license this. I was like astounded when they licensed it when I saw
Wow.
it show up.
That is funny. I did not I was looking at it and I remembered you mentioning that one, but I was
Yeah.
like, well, there's no mention of the house. So I was like, I don't know if this is the same one, but okay.
It definitely
All
is. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to check it out. Number 2 was Record of Wartania War. This battle isekai novel isn't afraid to get the job done and is a harsher take on revenge, war, and building a kingdom. Ryoma Mikoshiba, an ordinary high schooler, adept at martial arts. Okay, how's he a normal high schooler if he's adept at martial arts? Anyway, one day finds himself summoned to another world. The ones who summoned him, something empire, cite the fact that when those summoned kill another living being, they can absorb a fraction of their strength and make it their own as their reason.
How convenient.
All right. But upon learning the Empire uses those they summon to strengthen themselves by foul means, Ryoma is consumed by hatred and slays an important member of the court. Attempting to escape the Empire's borders while keeping his identity a secret, he is accosted by 2 twin sisters, one golden-haired, the other silver-haired, in a meeting that sets the gears of fate in motion. The curtain rises on a record of the wars of a young supreme ruler in this other world fantasy.
Yeah.
I feel like
Everyone goes quiet.
I feel like that synopsis, like some synopsises, you're like, what does this story mean? And then other synopsis, I feel like that's like probably half the novel, like that they just gave away right there, I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just like the first 10 pages, but we'll see.
Well, it's just like a movie trailer.
Yeah.
Like they put everything good inside the trailer, so they put everything good inside the description.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, I could tell you about Ari Ferretta, get summoned to another world in their classroom. You've got lousy abilities. You fall down a hole. I mean, it makes it sound like you've described half the book, but really, like, that's only the first, 30 pages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for all we know, this happened in the first 30 pages, and there's still, 180 pages beyond that. I mean, that would be a pretty brisk pace for a book, but still, it's not impossible in light novels. It's kind of... I'm kind of getting a little tired, though, of the whole record of blank war. I'm just... It's becoming a little generic now, you know what I mean?
I think this one's supposed to be pretty gruesome. I mean, just from the description, it sounds like either the character's going to be forced to kill other people or other people are going to come after him. So, it's going to be probably pretty violent. Even the cover, this guy looks pretty rugged. I don't know. I have heard. I think it's going to be a little more of a violent series. Yeah.
Like looking at the main character on the cover, it says a little bit of like Berserk or, you know, like it certainly doesn't look like it's going to be a heartwarming tale, that's for sure.
But the absorbing enemy powers is sounds like it's going to be an OP main character again.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think it sounds like, I mean, by the sounds of it, basically, it sounds as if the whole thing is setting him up as becoming eventually the ruler of his own kingdom or whatever, and going to war with
that's
people.
What it says.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, it's fair enough, right? Fair enough. Number 3. Hey, it's a Yuri sci-fi novel. Come on. Side by Side Dreamers. Saya Hokage, a high school girl who is unable to sleep due to insomnia, encounters Hitsuji Konbaru, a girl who can put anyone to sleep as a, quote, lover in a dream. When Hitsuji's senpai, Ron Aizome, sees potential in Saya, she ends up joining them and their group of sleepwalkers. As it turns out, unbeknownst to the common citizens in their town, a battle has been unfolding between the Suiju, beings that possess people's spirits in the land of sleep, and the sleepwalkers who have the power to move about freely in their dreams. Sleeping together as a team, Saya... You dirty pigs! They share a room!
You could have worded that description a little better.
I was trying to hold it in the whole time.
And then all of a sudden you're like, spicy! Like... Okay, so somebody needs to ask Sam if he wrote this. Sleeping together as a team, Saya and her newfound group, sounds like there's more than just 2 girls, are doing a good job hunting Suiju. That is, until an unexpected darkness comes along. Will the girls be able to defend humanity's sleep? I have no idea how long this thing is. I didn't look it up, I'll be honest.
It seems to be a standalone.
Oh, is it a standalone? Okay. It could be, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be complete at 1 volume in Japan, yes.
Oh, okay. All right, well, fair enough, that's fine.
Until they do a sequel.
Well, you know, they find someone new to sleep with. Anyway, sorry, that was just too easy. Okay, 4th one. Seriously seeking sister, ultimate vampire princess, just wants a little sister. Plenty of service will be provided.
Oh, God.
That sounds worse than the previous one.
Yeah. What's with all these titles?
I don't know, man. It's Yuri. It's vampires. It's cute and irresistible. This is what they put in their Twitter. Long ago, on the continent of Ephenia, there existed the feared tribe of vampires called True Bloods, whose great strength allowed them to reign supreme over all other tribes. However, a millennium has passed, and any trace of them has vanished off the face of the planet. That is, until the youngest and most talented royal daughter of the True Bloods awakens in the modern day. Vampire Princess Ristia has only one wish, a cute little sister. Monstrously strong, skilled in magic, and incredibly beautiful, people regard her as an angel, but she assures everyone she's just a normal girl. Can this, quote, normal girl be the elder sister she so desires? Follow this unusual vampire through a fan service-filled, sibling-searching fantasy adventure.
I got one question. How can you be normal when you're a vampire? Like, it just does not compute.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, you know, there are other novels where someone is supposedly average.
well, there's lots of novels where somebody's OP and they tell everybody they're just average. I mean, oh, I'm just normal. Will you be my little sister? I don't know.
I'll live for 2,000 years. I'm just normal.
Yeah, just normal. All right, and then the last one, and this one is not weird in any way. This one is actually the rescue we were talking about. It's a Tokyo Pop rescue, and that is Crest of the Stars, Banner of the Stars.
Yay!
Yeah. And what's interesting about this is that J Novel Club is completely retranslating the series. They are not using any of Tokyo Pop's previous stuff.
Yay!
Why?
And again, this is
I mean, it's been some time since I've read the novels, but I don't think they was that bad.
I'm not saying that was
Yeah,
bad
I
or
don't
not.
remember as well if it was bad or not.
I just, given what Tokyo Pop did to some of their light novel releases, I'm just kind of thinking it can't be any.
Did they censor any of their releases like what Viz did when they used to do light novels like 15 years
You
ago?
don't have to censor anything in Quest of the Stars.
Well,
Well, I've never read it. So
it
I
wasn't.
wouldn't
It
know.
wasn't so much. It's not so much censoring, but they did weird things like with Kino's Journey. I think they actually changed the order of some of the chapters. When in their release, I think they actually omitted some chapters, but then mixed them into other volumes. Like they just did some weird stuff. Yeah. So in the far distant future, mankind has traversed the stars and settled distant worlds. But no matter how advanced the technology of the future becomes, it seems the spacefaring nations cannot entirely shed their human nature. Jinto Lin finds this out the hard way when, as a child, his home world is conquered by the powerful Ob Empire, the self-proclaimed kin of the stars and rulers of vast swaths of the known universe. As a newly appointed member of the Ob's imperial aristocracy, Jinto must learn to forge his own destiny in the wider universe while bearing burdens he never asked for, caught between his surface dweller lander heritage and the Byzantine culture of the Ob, of which he is now nominally a member. A chance meeting with the brave but lonely apprentice star pilot Lafir aboard the patrol ship Gosloth will lead them both headfirst down a path of galaxy-spanning intrigue and warfare that will forever change the fate of all of humankind. So, yeah, I don't know how the books were laid out. I think there's a couple volumes of Crest of the Stars and then a couple volumes of Banner of the Stars, and I think each of those is kind of an arc, if I recall.
Quest of the Stars is the first arc.
Yes.
And Banner of the Stars, at least that's the way it was in the anime.
Yeah, it was the sequel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it goes down. So, now apparently what's interesting about this too is that this is the same publisher as J.K. Haru and what is it? Last Idol?
Yeah, First and Last Idol.
Oh, okay.
First and Last Idol. Yeah.
Hayakawa, I think.
Yeah.
Only that this one is actually good.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, this one is, as much as it is classed as a light novel and as much as, it's marketed as a light novel, there is an argument to be made that this is more of a sci-fi series, like sci-fi lit as opposed
It
to.
is, yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if is Hayakawa. Are they even? I could be totally wrong. Are they even a light novel publisher? Like, are they?
No.
They're
No,
primarily
I don't
novel.
think so.
No, they're not. They're not. In fact, that was one of the funny things that Sam told. I can't remember if it was while we were just chatting when we did our podcast with him, but he said that was the funny thing. He's like, in Japan, J.K. Haru is a sex worker in another world. It wasn't the content that caused any controversy. What pissed people off was because the publisher is such a non-light novel publisher that people were like, what the hell are you doing publishing this light novel trash? Like the fact that they would put something out that seemed so much like a light novel was actually what caused the controversy. So yes, they are very much not a light novel publisher. And again, like Crest of the Stars, Band of the Stars, I mean, these are sci-fi novels, but because they were put into anime, a lot of people see them kind of as light novels.
Yeah,
Plus,
it's kind of like Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Yes, very much like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Yeah, same sort of idea. So, but nonetheless, it's kind of cool. Again, another Tokyo Pop rescue, which is neat, showing that it is definitely possible. Yes, hope would be a way to put it. And well, I mean, it shows too that because, as far as I know, Sam made this deal with the publisher. So I'm thinking it must mean that some of the rights that Tokyo Pop held are reverting back to the publishers now. So
That's good.
Brings us back to 12 Kingdoms.
Brings me back to Scrap Princess.
yes.
So
Well, I think
I hold more hopes for J-Novel Club to rescue 12 Kingdoms than 7 Seas.
well, I have to say, I think J Novel Club seems to be more the rescuer at present. But again, I think Full Metal Panic is going to definitely be the make it or break it for old series with them. Because I mean, even this one, Crest of the Stars, I'm pretty sure Sam was saying that they licensed it fair and square, but I think because they were developing a relationship with this publisher, I don't think it was quite as expensive for them to rescue this one as it was to rescue Full Metal Panic, or will be to rescue some of the other more notable series that Tokyo Pop had. So again, this is it's a big financial risk, right? Like it's kind of lousy, but I mean, that's just the truth. The English publishers, that's why they're picking up these series that are only 2 or 3 volumes long, or they're series that either have an anime or have a very good potential to get an anime, because they know that will make people go out and look for the stuff, right?
And Sam, he doesn't really drop series. Like, that's kind of like one of their things is if they pick up a series, they're going to go through the whole thing. So if they're going to license rescue something, like, they have to be maybe not 100% sure, but they got to be certain that it's going to at least break even, I think.
Oh, well, that's yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the thing in general, because yen on 7 Seas, they're all the same, right? That basically now because their business models are so tied to the publishers, and let's face it, all the light novel publishers, or at least the vast majority of them, also publish manga. So, I mean, if you're 7 Seas and you screw over a publisher by dropping their series, that potentially is now dozens of manga titles that you will not be able to license. Right? So it's a bad business practice. And like I said, that's why a lot of these publishers are a bit gun shy, even if everybody's like, yeah, I get this series, we'll all read it. They look at it and they're like, okay, it's 25 volumes long. And if, we look in our comments and okay, there's 20 of you screaming every time to license it, but that's only 20 copies. Like,
how much volumes is Full Metal Panic? 12?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know. I know
FMP has a spin-off and a sequel series, Full Metal Panic, and Sam wants to bring them all if he can. So yeah. So I mean, it's the
original Full Metal Panic is 9 volumes.
Okay, there you go. So so he's got the 9 volumes right now, and he said if it does well, he's going to pick up the sequel and potentially the spin-offs.
Maybe the number I have here is including.
Oh wait, hold on.
So.
Oh wait, no, it is 12. My bad. I was accidentally on the manga page for it.
Oh. All right, fair enough. Main event time. The Saga of Tanya the Evil. So this one is licensed for English release by Yen On. Tonight because these volumes are monstrously long.
Huge.
Like, I mean, to be fair, they're 400 pages, which is kind of the length of a Danmachi, but the text, I'm pretty sure
They feel longer.
it's a smaller font that they've used, and the text is much more dense. You don't get a lot of just 1 or 2 words per line because it's dialogue. Like,
They do not waste any page space.
no, not even.
Nope.
Not even a little bit. So, yes. So we're only covering about the first 1.5 volumes. The anime that came out, correct me if I'm wrong, it only covered the first 2 volumes, give or take a little bit.
No, almost,
The anime
almost
covered
3.
the first 2, most of 3,
Oh, okay.
and then the movie that just came out finished 3 and adapted parts of 4.
Oh, yeah, the movie. Yeah, that just came out, right? You saw it. Yeah, so you said it was the finishes.
It was very good. Go see it.
All right, there you go. Resounding. So this one is an isekai series. It is, although funny enough, a very different kind of god that our main character meets, which I'm sure will be probably a good chunk of our discussion. So basically, we have this salaryman who works in human resources in a Japanese company. He is... Well, we'll talk about him too, obviously, but let's just say that his way of carrying himself might upset some people. And it obviously does because he gets shoved in front of a subway train.
Well, he's too by the book.
Yes. So he gets shoved in front of a subway train and, splat. And he comes face to face with God, as you often do in isekai stories. And but this time, God is like really cranky, and God's like, you know what? You flippin' human beings, you have like no faith. You don't believe in me. You don't worship me. You do nothing. You suck so much. And this dude is like, well, what do you expect? We live in a world that's mostly at peace. It's not like we've got magic where, there's like, oh my gosh, miracles happening all the time. He's like, it's really easy not to believe in a higher power. Like, it's not really our fault. It's not like you've been down there doing anything. Which is probably the wrong tact to take with this cranky god, but so be it. And so God's like, well, fine then. Magic and war, you say? Well then, have I got a world for you. And so our salaryman finds himself reincarnated in the body of a young girl, Tanya, who lives basically in a world that is a mirror of World War I Europe in Germany. And she, of course, can do magic. And at the ripe old age of 12, finds herself drafted into the military.
She volunteers.
Well,
She volunteers.
And she's only 9.
Okay, she volunteers. Okay, fair enough. She volunteers. She's 12. Who's
9.
Yeah. Yeah, so what? She can do magic. Shut up. Just goes to show you how dependent they are on magical warriors. In any case, then, of course, the book follows Tanya's rise through the ranks. I guess is probably the best way to put it. At least that's certainly what we see in the parts that we're going to talk about tonight.
The rising of the mad hero.
The mad hero. Yeah. So, Tanya, where to start with this one? Let's start with salaryman here, and maybe part of this could be to talk about how this book is written, because it is weird to me in a way. I mean, it works, but it is kind of strange because salaryman. Do we even know his name? We don't, do we?
No, I don't think so.
I was trying to remember, and I was flipping through volume 1, and I'm looking at. I'm like, I honestly don't think we know his name.
Yeah, throughout all the adaptations, they never give his name. But in the manga version, you actually get to see his face. So
Oh,
that's
do you?
something. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a 30, like looks like in his like mid-30s.
Okay, so do you not see his face in the anime?
Nope.
You see it.
Well, you like see like close-ups, but like you don't see like a full like
Oh, okay.
close-ups to his eyes as he's like panicking, like while he's talking to God as he's about to be run over, but you don't really see like his full figure.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Now, do you guys kind of think this guy's a sociopath?
Of course he is.
Absolutely.
Well, he is like the ultimate cutthroat capitalist. I mean, if he sees waste anywhere, he just, just sniffs it out like a dog and just eliminates it with extreme prejudice. And, that can go for human beings as well.
Which is why he was so good at his job.
Yep.
And why he found himself in front of a subway train.
Yeah.
And he'll do whatever it takes for advancement. It doesn't matter if he, has to stab somebody else in the back. As long as he can move forward a little bit, he'll do that. If he can get a cushy gig, he'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, it is really funny to read the book and see the number of times he talks about using others as a shield. I mean, there is not a battle that he has entered, and we are only talking about the first book and a half. And like every battle he enters, he contemplates about which people he's going to use as his shield if things go south.
Yeah, that's one thing that surprised me when I read the novel, because that's not as explicit in the anime.
Oh, really?
Nah, like in the anime, like you get it that like she's a bit crazy around the edge, but it's not as in the book as you're inside his or her head, like, and you actually get to know that she thinks crazy things all the time.
Oh, it's obvious she thinks crazy things, but in the anime you don't get as much internal monologues, so much of the pondering whom to use as a meat shield is internal monologue, so you don't get that much of that in the anime.
I was wondering about...
I recently re-watched parts of the anime for this, and I think ways to get across those monologues that they couldn't include is that they make some of her dialogue a lot darker than the book portrays. Like in the very first episode, which takes place in chapter 3 of the first volume, because the anime decides to do a flash forward just to like have an action packed like first episode.
Yeah.
You have it's her and Visha on the Rhine front, and then you have the two subordinates who disobey her orders. And in the book, they're kind of just taken off of her squad because they don't follow orders well. But in the anime, it pretty heavily implies that she sent them basically to their deaths.
I think the book implies that as well.
Not as heavily, though, from what I remember, though.
Yeah, I got the same feeling that it wasn't as heavy as in the anime. In the anime, it's really like it's premeditated. Like you know that she did send them there because she knew it was gonna get bombed. As in the book, it's more like she just get rid of them, and it's not as cruel as
It's
in
like
the anime.
it felt more like a coincidence that it kind of happened versus the anime, which like reveals what happens to them, and then Visha just goes up to her and she's like, "Did you know this was gonna happen?" And then she has that overly evil grin, and then the episode ends.
I think there's a scene where Visha talks to Tanya about the two dying in the book, and as far as I remember it, it's quite obvious that Visha is horrified when she learns that Tanya sent them there to die. I think that's in the book as well.
I'd have to reread parts of the book, but
Well, nonetheless, the fact is that she is pretty ruthless in terms of how she uses the people around her, which is even a little bit more horrifying when you consider she's this little 12-year-old lolly blonde-haired girl.
Yeah, and especially like you get the feeling that all of these grown-up adults, like they follow this little child to the to the word because like she's frightening. Like it doesn't feel as like there's a reason why some of the character speak of her as a devil, because it doesn't feel right.
She is, well, you can tell the way that okay, let's talk about this for a second about how the book is written, because honestly, this is the one thing that I am just, it's cool to me, and then at the same time I'm kind of like, this is just weird. Like you have this character who talks about Tanya as if he isn't Tanya, even though he is Tanya.
Yes, I was always wondering whether that's something that's a bad translation or if it's really there in the original too, because it's not consistent in any way.
No,
if there's if it's something about physical reactions of Tanya's body, then he talks about she, and if he talks about something that's mental, that she's thinking, then he says I, but no, it's completely all over the board.
I thought as well that there was like an explanation and like a consistency, but there's not. But I think that if it's done in the original, I think it's done to show that she's just crazy. Like he has problem adapting to that new world. He has problem adapting to the fact that he's not in his own body anymore, and it's like he's trying to distance himself from this new reincarnation, but at the same time he has to live the moment, so there's a kind of confusion there. I'm not sure if it's if it was done like on purpose or not.
The point is, I don't think Tanya is crazy. She's a psychopath, but she's not crazy. She is always able to think logically, and as far as being confused about being in another body, she's been living in this body for 12 years, so the confusion should be gone by that time.
Yeah, but the wording doesn't seem like it is. Like it's kind of weird how it's all worded.
For me, it always felt like it was a coping mechanism, because it gives him an excuse to just constantly step over the line, to forget just alone fighting in wars and killing people to what could be considered downright war crimes. And it was just his way to disconnect his psyche with what Tanya is forced to live through.
That would
that
be
makes sense.
An option if it were consistently in situations where she's forced to commit war crimes, but it's not even consistent in this regard. It's just sometimes he uses third person, sometimes he uses first person, and there's really no logic to it or no consistency.
Yeah.
From what I know from people who have read up to date in the Japanese versions, at the beginning, it's almost like an Overlord, where Ainz, like how in the beginning of the story, Ainz is kind of like half good, half evil, but as the story goes on, like the evilness starts to seep in, and like he starts to lose his sanity, and he becomes more of an Overlord. It's kind of like a similar thing in Tanya, where near the beginning of the story, she still finds herself like to think that she is truly a male, just in a female body and she tries to reject it. But from what I've read and what from other people have read, it gets a lot more, she just kind of accepts it. And, like, she just stops talking in third person eventually. Like, she accepts that she is Tanya and that, like, her old life is pretty much, there's no chance she's ever gonna get it back anyway. So she kind of just accepts her situation.
So you're saying that, now again, I have not read obviously that far ahead, but you're saying the novel acknowledges that there is a disconnect happening early on and that eventually it gets acknowledged, or does it just kind of fade away?
It's pretty subtle and it mostly fades away because I've read up to the English releases and the inconsistencies of switching between first and third person definitely seems to decrease as you go through the books.
Maybe the translation got better?
It could be that. I don't know,
think
because
it's the
I don't read
translation.
Japanese, so
I
Yeah, I
don't.
don't
Maybe the
think so,
original
too.
author got better?
this is the same translator that does Overlord too.
And honestly, given the complexity of the things in Tanya, in terms of the tactics, the names, all that kind of stuff, there's no way the translator blew it on I and me, and you know what I mean? There's just no way that you could nail so much other crazy stuff and screw up that.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe the author was trying to set up, like, this is Tanya, and I'm setting up, like, the main character. I'm setting up her life to be this way. She's going to do these things. She's going to get these accomplishments. I'm doing the actions for her to maybe set up, will this character stay in this body? Maybe he'll be able to leave this body and go somewhere else. But it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. 'Cause it sounds like it's more, I don't want to accept that I'm Tanya. And then later, they do accept it. Yeah.
It seemed to me, and again, I would have to read more and I would have to go back through volume 1. But it seemed to me, you're right, there is inconsistency. But it seemed most often that he would talk about I, as in myself, when there was a potential gain or a potential threat to Tanya. It seemed that he would always talk about Tanya as if she was disconnected from him when they were in a situation that really wasn't involving... there wasn't that immediate thought of, oh, I could die, or, oh, I need to make sure I advance myself as much as possible, or I want the army pension, or I want, you know, it seemed to me when there was that definite possibility of loss of life, that was when he referred to Tanya as I. And when there was that definite possibility of gain, or that was where he was thinking was, if I do this, I get this, that's where he was, I get. But it's always in conversations, like, you know, when he's talking about talking to the troops, addressing the troops, it's like Tanya straightens herself up at the dai and starts talking, or Tanya does this, or Tanya, again, I'm sure there's inconsistencies that break that, but it seems to me that those were very clearly times where I thought, oh, he's using I because he's afraid he's going to die, or he's looking forward to the big payoff for this.
So when you say that it gets more consistent later on, in which direction does it get more consistent?
Him embracing that he is Tanya.
So more
the whole talking third person, as if the mind and the body are separate, starts disappearing as you go through the series.
So maybe it's supposed to be the disconnect between personality and body thing. I think that's the most likely explanation I've heard so far.
Yeah.
But for me, it just doesn't work because she's 12 years old at the beginning of the story, and the first couple of years are skipped over pretty quickly. So that kind of problem should have been solved before the novel even started.
Yeah, but at least for me it works. Like for me it kind of make me believe that she has a screw loose and she comes out more ruthless, more cruel than if she would speak normally.
I kind of wondered. I certainly, it was my impression that there was sort of that dysphoria, right? That I'm not. This isn't really my life. That's the denial, and even, and yes, I understand what you're saying, Mirage, in terms of how long he has lived as Tanya. You would think that there would be that acceptance, but I kind of wonder if that also has to do with the whole rejection of being X, right?
Yeah.
Sort of that whole thing, because that is something that I don't know how it goes later on, but definitely in the first volume and, and it's still continuing on to the second volume, there is very much that disdain that he has for being X. This, especially because being X does not just stay as some benign thing in the background. Being X...
It never is benign in the first place.
Oh, no. Well, no, not benign. No, you're right. But in most isekais, it's like God says, hey, sorry, I screwed up. See you later. And then you never hear from God again. But in this one...
Except when he calls.
But in this one, not so much.
Divine intervention.
Oh, like...
Makes Tanya's life a living hell.
Yeah, actually, there's one scene that's in the anime that they added in the anime. I think it was one of the most impressive scenes. It's after Tanya shoots down a few enemy fighters, and in the novel it's just back to base at the end. But in the anime, she goes down, touches down with one of the downed fighters trying to make a prisoner. And God possesses being X possesses one of the dead pilots and talks to her. It's a very creepy scene. And it's very impressive also.
Well, and they have the whole magic system in this. And so basically, I have to admit, I'm still wrapping my head around the magic system in this. As far as I know, the idea is basically, it sounds a lot like the Irregular at Magic High School. That was what I thought initially.
Yeah, it's a kind of technology.
Yeah, that they have these orbs that they use, and they call them like computational orbs or whatever. And they call, even in spells, they don't really call them spells. There are formulas. Yeah, and so it's basically, to me, it's almost as if the way the magic system works is that the individual supplies the mana, the energy. The orb then basically comes up with some kind of computation that when you add the energy to it, it creates an effect. And there was that whole scene where they're testing the new orb in the first volume. Now, was this in the anime where she was doing the testing? Yes. And God, being X, basically was like, the only way you're going to survive is by worshiping me?
Yeah, because like in that point of the story...
that's necessary because otherwise she wouldn't be praying in all the future battles.
Yeah, the whole point of that part of the story was that they already had a type of orb that was like normal issued military, but they wanted to make a more advanced prototype, which is why she was testing it, and it was pretty much just to make their soldiers like better fighters or whatever. And it was basically a piece of crap because it's prototype, and being X pretty much like he does in the book and the anime is he uses his divine intervention to give visions to the Doctor, and he helps him create, like, he adds his, I guess he uses his own like godly powers on the prototype, and he pretty much wills it to work properly, but under the one condition that the only way to operate it is to pray to him for it to activate. And the whole point of that is that he thinks by forcing Tanya to have to pray to her orb in order to unleash her powerful magic, doing it over and over and over again will eventually like convert her into a believer.
Yeah.
Because she has to like depend on his power in order to get out of really tight situations.
It's indoctrination.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
Pavlov.
like the
I love how she fights it by going to the church, and I don't know if it was this way, but it sounded like she just like mutters curses in her head the whole time she's sitting in the pew. I don't know if that's exactly it, but.
And the interesting thing is that in the book, like when they bring up like this new computation orb, like just before you have all of these god, because in the book you have multiple god, in the anime there's only one, and it's all everything in the first book is pretty consistent because everything is set up in a way that recalls business. Like the gods, they get together, it's like business council, like what are we doing with our product, it's fate, it's not going well, so how do we bring it back? And by essentially like they discuss multiple option and basically giving human magical artifact is kind of the way they're going through it, but they don't want to give it to them, so that's why they send a vision, as if like the doctor will build this computation orb himself and become a miracle, and by being a miracle people will like have faith and stuff, but it's also true that by like forcing Tanya to pray to God, like it's indoctrination, and it's the same thing as product placement.
From the outside looking in, though, you might be like, it's not that bad, as, again, assuming that he doesn't totally take control of her mind. But if you're just saying, oh, he's giving them an item that helps them out, it's not so bad. But they were formulating some other plans, and some of them included, natural disasters, Noah's Ark type things. And they're like, no, we can't do that because they'll either figure out a way around it or they'll explain that it's, some kind of scientific phenomena. So, like, if they could, they would have, annihilated half the human race if that would have, got them to believe in the gods.
Is that multiple gods thing in the first 2 volumes? Because I don't.
Yeah, it is in the first volume.
Yeah.
There's
the anime doesn't really include it.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's it that's the thing, exactly. It presents a very, like I said, it presents a very different view of gods. Most light novels, God is this either a bubbly lolly or this doddering old man who screwed up somehow.
Or a useless drunk.
So it is a weird kind of thing, right? It's a very different way of looking at the gods, and again, bringing in this element. That's one of the things about Tanya, the Saga of Tanya the Evil, that I find interesting is, on the one hand, it reads very much almost like a textbook, like a sort of volume about a war, like when you get a nonfiction book about a war and it tells you what happened and everything else. Sometimes it feels a lot like that, but then it has this weird element of the whole God and fighting against God's will, and then God trying to get people to worship them, and it's just
Well, thing is, in Japanese, the title is Yojo Senki, which basically is the chronicle of a little girl, and that's what it is. Like, it's built up as a chronicle.
Plus, there's the fact that the novels unlike the anime focuses on the parts centered only around Tanya most of the time, whereas the book likes to change perspective a lot. Like, you get a lot more time with all the generals when they're like planning their military tactics on how to defeat a certain enemy. And then, like, not included in the anime, you have small chapters that are like flash forwards to like the 70s and 80s, where you have like radio broadcasters and like news reporters talking about events that happen in the normal timeline, but not spoiling it, like giving like little hints of like what is to come.
Yeah, that's one of my main gripes with this series. I mean, the story is great, the characters are great, but I think the writing could have used a lot more editing and tightening up. You know, the rule for writing: show, don't tell. And you should show what happens and don't spend too much time explaining it to the reader. And many novels make the mistake of showing instead of telling, but in Tanya, I think they're showing and telling and telling and telling again. From
400 pages of it.
Yeah, we're doing only up to half of Volume 2, so I'm trying to keep this spoiler-free. There's the second half of Volume 2 is basically a large part of it is one battle, and it's shown from 6 different perspectives. One, a flashback from the present, then the general staff planning this operation, then Tanya being the general staff explaining to Tanya the operation, then the briefing of her troops where it's all explained again, and then the actual combat. It's by the 6th version, I was just was tempted to flip through the pages to get it over with. That was extreme.
Yeah, and the author actually says it in the afterword, after the first volume, is that, at least for the first volume, and I probably suspect others following, is that it didn't have an editor. Oh. The print volume that got submitted was the very first draft of the web novel. Yeah. And so
I'm not surprised at all.
And so even the author was like, hey, guys, what are you doing? I honestly don't think this is ready for print. And they just pushed it on through. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely missing those professional touches to trim the fat. Because, yeah, you know, having the planning of an operation, the actual operation, the debriefing of the operation, news reports of the operation, you know, just getting the same information.
Oh yeah, and I forgot the flashback to her student days when when Tanya developed the tactics for the operation. That was.
Yeah, the author is definitely very guilty of this. He'll just tell us the same information 3 or 4 times, and yeah, it does get kind of grating.
Yeah, I think you could have shaved a good quarter of Volume 2 without losing anything.
What sucks is from what I've read, it only seems to be Volume 2 that really has this problem. Like I didn't really run into this problem that often later on.
Maybe they had an editor then.
Maybe, but because Volume 1 was pretty straightforward, because like each chapter is pretty different, because it's just following Tanya from like when she first joins the military, and then she goes on a few test operations, and then she ranks up, and then you have to build a squadron, and then it kind of ends. But Volume 2 is kind of like a bunch of events all over the continent. Like, at one point she's in the West, and then at one point she's in Southeast Europe, and then at one point she's in Scandinavia. It's her and her squadron going kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I can think of why they left that is because by showing how many different groups are talking about the same stuff, it kind of like broadens like the scope of like, it makes the world seem like very like large. But yeah, I agree that they kind of went a little overboard in Volume 2 when it came to like repetition.
I don't have any problems with the story moving from place to place, because the chapter in Hungary is pretty short, and it doesn't need to be longer than the section in Scandinavia. That's also pretty well paced. And then when it moves to the Western Front, to the Rhine Front, that's when stuff gets out of hand, especially the Arsene operation.
I feel a lot of the book at times is thinking that the reader is a complete idiot.
Oh, I get this feeling a lot when I read light novels.
Maybe the author thinks he is Tanya, and we are the grunt soldiers.
Well, I feel like this book, and again, I don't know really anything about the author, but it strikes me when I'm reading it that it is about the same way as when you are having a conversation with a history buff. They assume that no one else in the room knows as much about history as they do. And so they fill you in on all, not just what happened, but why it happened, what the reflection of the present on those events happening now is. And you just get all inundated with all this stuff because the person thinks that you're an idiot who knows nothing and that you won't be able to put two and two together.
Oh yes, one indication for that is the footnotes.
Yes.
I was going to say the same.
It has a lot of footnotes, and sometimes it explains words and abbreviations that are completely obvious. I think in Volume 2 there's a footnote for CP, for command point.
Yes.
When the one paragraph down they talk about command points. So even if you didn't know what CP means, you would have known it if you just read one paragraph further. And at other times they're talking about some obscure Japanese tactician.
Nothing.
And there's no footnote for that.
All the business terminology too. Like all the business terminology, almost all of it. There's never any footnote like explaining what it is. Yeah. And some of it, you can kind of infer. But there were some things where I was like, "What is Tanya exactly referring to here?" And maybe that's intentional because maybe we're supposed to be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they have a footnote. They have a footnote for Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
They have a footnote for Holy Relic. They have a footnote for ICBM.
They have a footnote for Valhalla.
Yeah.
There's a footnote for 1800 hours telling you that's 6 p.m. in military time.
They have a footnote for Napoleon.
What was the
Fon?
You mean Napoleon Dynamite,
They have a
right?
footnote for Fon, the Fon de Gudechav, for the title suffix. That's it's really ridiculous, especially if you're reading the ebook and you can click the hyperlink for the footnote, but the link back to the point you were skipping from, where you were reading, you can't click on that hyperlink because it's too far on the left side of the screen. So you're just going a page back instead of clicking the link.
Yeah.
So if every time you follow the hyperlink to the footnote, you have to remember which page you were on to get back.
Just don't read the footnote.
Yeah.
Yeah, the footnotes are another problem that get resolved as you go through the series, because I looked through, I have 5 volumes, and in the first 2 volumes you could have maybe 30, 40 footnotes per book, but I noticed in volume 5 there's maybe 6 footnotes in the whole book. So they really toned it down later.
Again, could be the fact that somebody said after volume 2, hey, an editor would be really good. Although I will say this, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Frog was actually posting some stuff online about Carlos Zen, the author of the Saga of Tanya the Evil. And apparently the reason that the first 4 volumes in particular were so hefty was because the author was given the idea that they may not get another, like, beyond 4 books. And so they were trying to, like, cram as much stuff as they could into those first 4 volumes because they thought, oh shit, this could be it. And that's why I guess it kind of mellows out apparently a little bit after the 4th volume, because at that point they're like, you know what, Carlo, the sales are good. We're good. You can ease off a little bit there, buddy.
We can do 200 pages.
Yeah,
which is fine.
What's kind of surprising about that is that from what I've heard is that while it was still a web novel, like, it had a lot of, like, grammar mistakes and stuff, but it was still apparently one of the most popular web novels on whatever site it was published on. So, like, that's kind of surprising hearing that, like, he wasn't sure if his series was going to make it very far in the light novel form.
Well, I think the thing is, though, that you find in the world when you're putting out content, particularly whether it be writing, art, what have you, the audiences that are willing to pay for your art and the audiences that love your art for free are not always the same people.
True.
And not the same amount of people.
That is exactly what my next comment was going to be. And the numbers of those people are not always the same either. I see it. I see it in my own stuff. My wife has done some work online. Same thing, right? She'll put something up. She does knit design patterns. Don't ask me. I don't knit. I have no understanding of it at all. But she'll put up one for free. 1,500 people will buy it. She'll put up a very similar one for like $3. I mean, it's $3. Man, she's lucky if she sells 100 copies, right? And so it doesn't, just because you're a success on a web novel doesn't mean that you're going to be a success in print, especially in like a very saturated market like the light novel market. And let's face it, I mean, obviously I have no idea, like Japan has way, way, way more light novels than we do. But when you take a look at the English market and what we have licensed, there's not really any books that are like Tanya that I can think of that I've read. In terms of just how detailed they are, in terms of how, as I said, when I read it, it felt in many ways like it was structured more like a nonfiction account of a war as opposed to a light novel.
Okay, we were talking about Quest of the Stars earlier, and I think it's actually quite similar
really?
regarding the tactical and strategic aspects.
Yeah, I don't remember much, but I think you might be right.
Well, I haven't read Crest of the Stars. I couldn't tell you. But again, when we were talking about that, Crest of the Stars was not necessarily marketed as a light novel series when it first came out. It was a sci-fi. And I mean, if you read hard sci-fi, you know there's a lot more.
I don't really give much on the distinction between light novel and novel, because a light novel is a novel with pictures. So, yes.
It's marketing. I mean, let's face it. That's what it boils down to. But I think that when you're talking of segment of who these things are marketed to, I think you generally find that in Japan, if they're marketing it as a light novel, they are trying to market it to an audience that, hey, this is a nice read that you can read for entertainment, and it's light. Whereas, let's face it, it's the same. Like, honestly, if I pick up a light novel, I have certain expectations. If I pick up a hard sci-fi 600-page novel, I have very different expectations. I think that's all I mean, is that depending on how you label something, it often can have different connotations for the audience. And in this particular case, this book as a light novel compared to a lot of other stuff that we have as light novels, very different.
It's not light.
Except the
in any manner.
over-explaining. the over-explaining is also here.
Which is why, even though I love the series, I'm very cautious about who I recommend the books to. Like, I always tell them, like it might not be for you. Like the premise might sound awesome, but when you start reading it, it's very different than what you probably expect.
Like,
Yeah.
did any of you guys saw the physical copy for for my daughter I defeat the demon lord?
No.
No,
For my daughter, I will defeat the demon lord.
no, I haven't seen.
Yeah, that's a light novel. Like, it's super tiny. And compared to this, beast, it's like, how can you market this as a light novel? Like, I don't get it.
I can say when I started this, like, before I started it, obviously I'd seen Tanya and I'd heard of the anime, and I thought it was just like, I don't know, like this badass military girl. Not that it isn't, but that it was just about this like badass military girl that loves killing, and like I thought it was like this super dark, like grim dark type kind of story. It was just like, oh, she just loves killing, and it's power fantasy, and it's definitely not that.
Yeah. Actually, when I saw the first episode of the anime, I almost stopped watching it because the season before that there was a series called Schwarzes Marken, and it was extremely bad. And I also watched only 1 or 2 episodes of that, and I thought
Which
it's just more of that, just war. And then I saw a review of someone telling me to watch at least episode 2, and that got me hooked.
Wait, which anime were you saying was airing the season before? Because I know there was...
Schwarzes Marken. I
Love
think
Schwarzes
something-
Marken.
that was something alternate reality with aliens.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
that's
World
not the
War
one I'm
II
thinking
or
of. I'm
something like
thinking
that.
of... Did anybody watch Izetta the Last Witch?
Yeah,
Oh,
Izetta
yes.
was.
Yes.
So see, that's what I thought this was gonna be like, except more darker and just like power fantasy. Yeah.
But Izetta, I think, was later. I'm not
Yeah.
sure,
No,
but
Izetta was the season before, because I
was
remember I
also the
watched
season
it.
before. Yeah.
I watched it, and I liked it at first, and then the plot started getting really stupid.
Yeah.
And then
Same
like I
here.
see the next season, oh, another series that's almost like World War I, World War II era, and I'm like, oh jeez, is this going to be a repeat of what I just watched? And it was totally different.
Izetta started okay, but the second half was
Garbage.
absolute shit.
Don't hold back. Tell us what you really think.
Yeah, it's a show
always do.
nobody probably remembers anyway. Except for us.
Actually, when I was rewatching this Tanya just for this podcast, I was always looking for that for a scene where they had naval combat against a ship, and it didn't come. And afterwards, I thought, okay, that scene was for Izetta. Probably. Yeah.
They bleed together.
I think I know which scene you're talking about too.
Yeah, I thought somewhere during the campaign in Scandinavia there has to be that ship to ship, mage to ship combat, but yeah, that was Izetta.
Oh, and something we should come right out and say, because this is vitally important. Tanya is not a lolly Nazi, okay? She's not.
Oh yes.
Because
I
there
know
are
it's a
no
meme.
Nazis in Tanya.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We had we had
Except
to convince
maybe
some
for being
conventions otherwise.
I just, because we've joked before, right? And said lolly Nazi, but she's not. There aren't Nazis in Tanya. It's actually, even the author has come out and said it's based on World War One. And funny enough, I saw again Frog, because she tweets like crazy on light novels. So, again, another thing with Carlos Zen saying it's World War One. There are no Nazis like that. That it's silly that people are calling her a lolly Nazi. And funny enough, I'm reading volume 2, and Tanya actually says that she realizes that the Empire is much like Germany in World War One. So even in the book, it
The
says that
Empire's
it's World War
flag
One.
is literally the flag of Prussia.
Yeah.
Like, if you look up the flag of Prussia, like the real life flag, it's pretty damn similar to the Empire
It's not only the
in
flag,
series.
it's also the culture, the power structure.
Yeah, it's
everything
definitely
about it is like World War
It's
One,
definitely
like
the Kaiser
German
era
Empire.
of Germany
It's
from World War One.
it's called the Empire.
Yeah.
It's not called Germany, but it's called the Empire, like the German Empire,
Yeah.
not the Reich.
Sorry, there was one footnote on like Napoleon, and in the footnote it mentioned like this guy with a mustache on the German side. It didn't even want to acknowledge his name. You know, it didn't even want to acknowledge Hitler's name. So yeah, they definitely don't have any reference for that in this book. No.
Yeah.
No.
So I just had to throw that out there. It's not really relevant to anything
No.
other than if you're offended by Nazis and you've been turned off by the idea that this is somehow a pro-Nazi book. It's not.
Nope.
So there you go.
Yeah, some people just assume it's Nazi proactively and ban some cosplays. I think Flyz has something to say about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I used to live in New York, which I don't live anymore, and they just started a convention there 2 years ago in Manhattan, and they like maybe a week or so ago they released a statement showing off like some rules that they had for cosplay restrictions, which is funny because they start off the email saying, "We do not want to limit your creativity, but you are not allowed to cosplay such and such from so and so series," and Tanya the Evil was listed among them. And like, since I've actually watched and read the books, and a bunch of other people have watched the show and read the books, we were like, what are you talking about? Like they mentioned Hellsing, Captain America, and Indiana Jones along with them. And while those series do technically have characters that are Nazis, Tanya the Evil has literally zero Nazi symbolism or any ideology in the series at all. Like, the main character is a hardcore capitalist.
Yep.
Like, she's not a fascist. Like, it's very,
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure Hitler hated capitalists, from what I know.
Yeah, but thing is, like, a lot of people that need footnotes, like, they just equal, like, war and Germany equals Nazis. So for them, they don't even think. Like,
It's because it's been so popularized, right? I mean, again, how many animes? What the heck is that series that's based on a visual novel that Steiner did? Deus Ray or whatever it was.
Yeah, Deus Ira A or whatever.
that was not good.
Well, but I mean, again, right? It's an anime. You could cosplay a character from that, and I believe that had very overt Nazi symbolism
Yeah,
in
I think the Muvlov series has some. Not to derail a little bit, but I think it has some, but it's not like pro. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's Schwarzenmark and Mirage was talking earlier.
Yeah, it's not just anime. Look at any medium. Look at computer games. Look at movies. How many movies are there about World War II, and how many movies are there about World War One?
Yeah.
Nobody knows about World War One, especially in the US.
As a history buff, that kind of disappoints me.
I think that's, well, yeah. That's a totally different podcast. But again, I think too, because Nazis, film, movies, books, they love a good bad guy, right? They love somebody who can be a villain. And the Nazis are like, perfect, right? Like you don't even have to worry about somebody coming back on you and saying, you know, you were really unfair to those Nazis in your book.
And we're talking about real Nazis, not people that disagree with you, who you claim are Nazis.
Well, but I'm talking about like World War II era Germany Nazis, right? But I'm just saying that they are such a, like, fiction has used them so much, and the name, because of the atrocities that were committed, it's everywhere. So and nobody talks about World War One. It's like it didn't even happen.
Yeah, because World War One, there was no one bad guy, because everyone was they were all just as bad as the other party. Because in World War Two, Germany attacked Poland and annexed Austria and Czechia, and then waged war against all the others. But in World War One, more or less, they all looked each other in the eye and said, "War, okay, yes." And then there was war.
Yeah, like there was, World War One. Yeah, it was basically a whole bunch of miscalculations, misinformation, assumptions that were wrong, but were made nonetheless. Yeah, absolutely, totally different situation. And this is
World War One pretty much started as if it was like an anime, because basically miscommunication, and like you can also like argue that the empire in Tanya is definitely just like Germany from World War One. The empire in Tanya is the country that is being invaded from outsiders, and in World War One, the only reason that Germany was in the war is because of like a spat between the Austrians and the Serbs. That was a complete misunderstanding, because the Serbs thought, oh, we're gonna get invaded because the Austrians seem like kind of seem kind of shady, even though they had like no evidence to back it up. And everyone just kind of had to declare war on each other because everyone was allies with other countries. So Germany kind of gets fucked over because they're like forced into the situation.
Yeah, and I think in Tanya, the Empire is even less of a bad guy than because in Tanya everyone else is the bad guy. In real World War One, everyone got to share the blame. Everyone was equally responsible, more or less. And in Tanya, it's explicitly the others who are the bad guys who raid the poor empire that has done nothing wrong.
At the beginning of Tanya, was it so the Entente were coming down, right? Were they expressly trying to take over that northern territory, or were they? No, it wasn't hiking.
They were doing a military exercise in the emperor's territory.
Yeah.
So.
So obviously they blamed command for giving them whatever that hiking order was, and I don't know what the reason was, but it was kind of either a mistake or an intentional mistake by command. I don't know.
I think in the novel and in the anime it was explained that they did not. The command did not think that the Empire would react with war.
Yeah.
They just thought they could get away with marching their troops across the border and just showing off their strength.
Yeah.
That's kind of naive.
Oh yeah.
lot.
What nation would do that in today? Let's say Mexico conducted a troop exercise north of the border.
Well, yeah.
I'm
go
sure
ahead.
Donald Trump would be fine with that.
Is the wall up already?
Let's not go there. Sorry.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. It's all good.
So I was going to follow up, and then the Empire ends up kind of making a mistake, and it's just kind of more bullheadedness, and like, ooh, we could take over, on time. We took away, a major military force for them. We could work our way in there and take over if we just send the majority of our good troops up there. And they're like, they know that they could get, that it could weaken their defense and that they are open to being attacked from another side. But they're like, we're going to go for it. Is that basically what kind of happens? And then, that's another mistake.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have the territorial gain on their mind. It's just that there's a war in the north and no war in the west, so they're moving troops to the north, and they're moving more troops than they should have.
Yeah, it shows. That's the one thing, and again, it's very much based on World War I, right? Where you basically have politicians who, in that the case, right? The politicians, if I recall, basically what they're trying to come across is that the politicians were having a hard time at home, and so they thought, hey, if we can strut our way into the empire, we look badass, so everybody still supports us. Not realizing that, that's not going to go over very well. You might as well just declare war. So, and it's the same thing. You see all of these different machinations and everything else, and that's where Tanya, even our salaryman inside Tanya, like starts getting all crazy about like the waste and the inefficiencies and everything else, and on all sides, not just their enemies, but on the Empire's side as well. Like Tanya is very critical of a lot of the plans that they have and a lot of the ideas that are put forth by command and stuff, even in just the first book and a half, right? Like there are many times that she stands up and says, no, this is not a good idea. And she's almost always right, but it's because she's using...
Mostly it's not about the war itself, but about the way they're proposing to go about it.
Yeah.
So she's never against the war itself, because it's a defensive war. So obviously, in this book, there's no way to avoid it. But she's questioning a lot of the tactical and strategic decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's not a question of should we be at war, because again, the Empire, as you said, for the most part, the Empire is not the aggressor as this starts off. Yes, I think the Empire takes certain liberties that the other aggressors have allowed them to take, but it's not like the Empire sets right out and says, oh yeah, we're going to take over this country and goes about doing it. It's more like, well, they walked into our territory, so...
Well, I think some of the the thing that makes Tanya so powerful, not just with her high affinity to magic, is that since she is reincarnated, and since the situation in this new world is so similar to how history played out in her original world, she has so much knowledge of if I suggest we do this tactic, it's not going to work because they tried doing that back in my world and it was a complete failure. So that's a stupid idea. So I should suggest we do so and so. Like, she has all this background knowledge, which is why like a lot of the time she writes like 100-page military like papers and submits them to her generals, and they're like, how the hell is she so damn conniving and smart? and they run with it, and it somehow works. And like she knows how the military rules work, and like she can manipulate them. Like how in the beginning of the second volume, she pretty much comes with an idea to win a fight by like kinda avoiding a war crime. Well, the cliffhanger at the end of the first book is that she's building her squadron of troops that she's been ordered to create, and then they find out that like the kingdom of Dacia is planning to invade. So that's the cliffhanger. And then at the beginning of the second book, they go over
you
there.
mean the bombing of the weapons facility?
Yeah.
The bombing of the capital of Dacia. Yeah. And like the whole point of it is that one of the rules in the military is that you cannot like suddenly attack like an enemy stronghold without it giving a warning. So Tanya, being I think she's like 10 years old at the point in the story, she uses her little girl voice to basically give them a warning that seems like a prank, so they don't take her seriously. So she technically did give them the warning, and then pretty much annihilates them anyway.
Yeah, but
so she technically did violate war crimes.
I thought it was more played for the gag, because even if they had taken that warning seriously, they started bombing the facility like 30 seconds later. That wouldn't have mattered all that much. There's a more fitting example for that in the second half of Volume 2. That's the one that we can't talk about here for spoiler reasons.
Are you talking about with when she when they're in the city?
No, when they attack the city.
Yeah, when they're in the city, and she basically declares that, like, because you're not supposed to attack civilians, obviously, but she pretty much declares that if a civilian doesn't evacuate like they're supposed to pretty much view them as if they are an enemy soldier. Which, like, if you're a civilian, I don't know why you'd be staying in a battlefield, but like she pretty much like declares that, and that like, oh, if they're staying, that means they're resisting. That means they want to fight against us. So you have to kill them, or else they'll escape, and then like they'll become enemy troops that we have to fight later on.
Well, you see people stay by their house, during tornadoes and tsunamis and stuff and floods. So I can see some citizens staying by their house during an assault, I guess, even though they shouldn't be.
Yeah, they make it in the novel. They make it pretty. They jump some hoops to make it less objectionable, like the people defending the city shooting some Empire prisoners and declaring over the radio that everyone will resist them. It's a bit whitewashing, I think.
It like straddles the line of like with all the things that Being X does to Tanya, the books try to get you to sympathize with her, but then when you see all the fucked up deeds that she actually commits, it makes it really hard at points.
That's the thing. Usually, in a normal novel, there's no way you could sympathize with a psychopath like Tanya. But the genius thing that the author does is giving her an antagonist that's even more evil and even more overpowered than Tanya herself. So you can still root for her.
Yeah, but come on. Like, it's a cute little character, and she doesn't fight with a gun. She pummels them with a shovel.
We didn't talk about how important shovels are.
Yeah, that part was hilarious. Like, oh my god.
That's also one of the parts that wasn't in the anime, I think. There's two parts they cut out of the anime. One was the submarine thinking of the submarine, and one was the part with the newbie training. The first one was not so important, I thought, but the latter one I thought would have been nice if it had been in the anime, because it was interesting.
Yeah, that speech was something.
Another case of if the anime was one episode longer. Syndrome. Yeah.
No, that was during the Rhine. The speech,
Yeah, I know, but like,
you might mean in the last episode. That's the best.
No, I mean like if the anime had 13 episodes instead of just 12, they might have been able to add that part into the story, into the anime version.
Ah, okay, yes. Even if you haven't seen the anime, there's one scene at the end of the last episode where Tanya is giving a speech. I'll post you a YouTube clip later, so you have to look at this. It's great. It doesn't spoil anything.
Okay.
So it's okay to watch.
All right, cool. Do you also kind of think that initially that's part of the reason why you can sympathize with Tanya is because of the disconnect between Salaryman and her? Do you kind of wonder if maybe that's part of the reason too, that because he's kind of, it's not like he's really part of the world, like the whole world is kind of at arm's length from him, so it's almost like it doesn't make the deeds as real?
No, for me it's not.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And like she's not 100% evil, because like at first, near the beginning of the series, she kind of sees her fellow troops as like just randos who like she uses as tools. But you see as you go through the series that when she has subordinates that are actually competent and they help her with her goals, she values them a lot more. Like Visha and Captain Weiss, like they see those are like her second and third in command, and she comes to really respect them, and even like if they're in trouble, protect them, because she sees them as way more valuable than a normal soldier.
I don't think Tanya is evil. Tanya, despite the title of the series, Tanya is not evil. She's a psychopath. She doesn't care about anyone else, but she's not actively trying to get anyone else killed, except for those two with the pillbox. But she is a believer in the free market and in economical growth, and would like to see the empire prosper. But of course, because that would mean that's beneficial for her, because a prospering empire means her home is prosperous, meaning she is prosperous. So she also tries to minimize losses, casualties during engagements, but mostly it's because it would reflect back badly on her career, and it is a waste of resources for the empire, and would reflect negatively on the war effort as a whole. So no, she's not evil. She just doesn't care about other people. She's a psychopath. Psychopaths are not evil per se.
She's as evil as a bureaucrat goes. Yeah, so like the English translation of the title is a little inaccurate. Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that. But like the thing that sucks about Tanya is that she pretty much can't win in either situation, because if she does a bad job, like you said, it reflects bad on her career. But the problem is that she is so efficient and so good at her job that she thinks, oh, if I do a good job and I climb the ranks, I'm going to have a cozy life in the rear and I won't have to deal with all this fighting, and Being X can go screw himself. But she's so competent that the military sees her as like they need to have her on the battlefield, or else it would be a complete waste. So she'll carry out like a battle, and like she'll have no casualties, and then like she'll tell her higher command like, oh yeah, the battle went completely smoothly, and they're like, okay, good job. Oh yeah, here's your next mission. So like the more she succeeds, the more she kind of screws herself in the end.
There's at least one scene too where she gives, I don't know which commander it is, but she gives them like a detailed report of like what she thinks is going to happen in the war, that it's going to become a world war. And then I think she gives them like a plan for, it might be even the plan for the battalion with a, you know, leader who's a mage, like a mage battalion or whatever. And she's like, I won't be in that. She says like, oh, that'll be some, you know, some random's problem if he institutes that. It won't be my problem, of course. She screws herself over, basically.
But
Pretty much.
Staying with the topic of being evil for now, if you compare Tanya to being X, here's a being that's completely evil. He's fanning a complete world war just to make a point to some guy who didn't believe in him. If something is evil, then this is it.
Well, and even the fact that, like we were talking about, the group of gods basically saying they're willing to cause mass destruction, death on huge scales if it means that there will be more faith. So yes, I mean, these are very callous creatures that care nothing about morality, humanity, whatever, as much as they argue about it. But yeah, really, it is true that being X, it's just to make a point. This whole battle, everything, I mean, I guess we could argue that it would have happened anyway, but certainly being X is fanning the flames and delivering a weapon to Tanya that is going to cause major changes in the direction of the war. It's that's like I said, it's a really interesting series to me because it's just so different in so many different ways, and yeah, there are a lot of different things you can discuss in terms of, like, even when we're talking about evil, that's the one thing that I kind of liked the modern day reporter segments of, was again that whole thing of, is Tanya evil? And now this guy's trying to figure out, was this devil of the Rhine or whatever, was it a real thing? You know? And so you're seeing through later eyes that they would see her as evil, even if at the time what she was doing wasn't really evil. It's that, it seems to me like it's kind of that flipping it on its head, that it's like, well, maybe she's not evil, but if the Empire loses, eventually someone may see her as evil because of what she did. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
History is written by the victor.
Well, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I like that's kind of why I like the whole modern day segments that are peppered throughout it. Is it gives you that kind of feeling that, oh, this is, you're still not sure of how it's going to go. It's not like it really, I don't think it spoils about how things are going to go. Like, you really don't know.
Not really, but one thing I was a bit I didn't like about the modern day segments was you can't really cover up something on the scale of what Tanya did. I mean, she influenced the whole course of the war, and just a few years later they have all of it hushed down, and nobody knows that she even existed or that her battalion even existed, despite all the accomplishments and what they did during the war. It's kind of hard to believe that they managed to hush it up to that degree.
Maybe that's a twist ending we will see. Till the end of the series.
I'm not sure what happens later. I only saw the up to the end of the anime. So maybe there is some twist that being X makes everyone forget or something like that.
Or I mean, again, as you said, it's not entirely realistic, but I mean, can you imagine, let's say the Empire loses, obviously Tanya's done hordes of damage to other people. The Empire themselves may not want it to get out what they did, particularly that, you know, they were using like a child to do that stuff. And on the flip side, the other countries could very well look at it and go, we don't want to acknowledge that this little girl did this to us. So it's almost like this sort of, we're going to be quiet because it's an embarrassment for everybody. Like, we're just going to wipe it off the books because...
That's the problem with all conspiracy theories. The more people know about them, the less likely they are to be kept secret. And there are so many people who know Tanya, who met her at the war college, at the front lines. There must be hundreds and thousands of soldiers who know her. That's impossible to keep quiet.
Well, again, they don't. I think the thing is that when he's talking about it, it isn't quiet, because obviously he knows there's this story, there's this rumor, there's these legends and everything else. I mean, obviously it all depends on how many people were still alive that would have been able to be eyewitnesses to the whole thing. Also, I'm not sure. Do they actually say how many years are between the present day segments?
What do you mean?
Well, I know that during it's like the 1920s or whatever, during Tanya's time. I'm saying, like, do we know how many years later? I got the impression it was a lot, like 20, 30.
I think at one point, one of the future segments, I think, says 1967. Now,
okay.
I think Flyz said it might go a little further, but yeah, I think one of them was.
It's like different time periods, and like sometimes in different places. So like there'll sometimes be like a radio talk show in the Unified States during the 70s, and then maybe like in a different volume there's like a newspaper article talking about like this day in history back 60 years ago in the war.
Right. Like
that takes place in a different country.
Okay.
So it kind of like shifts from different perspectives.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because, and again, I guess the other thing is that, remember, this is the 1920s. It's not like they have computers that are keeping this stuff. I mean, you burn paper records, the person effectively disappears, right? Really, like if there's no paper trail, the person's gone, because there's no internet that archives all things. Like, I mean, you can't even fart on the internet without it living forever now. But I mean, it's not like that in the 1920s, obviously, right? Like, you could disappear if the records of your existence were destroyed. Which
yes, if you were some no-name nobody, then you could. But if you are a war hero who has saved hundreds of soldiers on the front lines, and those soldiers get home to their families and tell them, "Oh, hey, I've been saved by a little girl," that's not something you can keep quiet.
Well, there's a lot of people that don't actually know Tanya's name, and just like refer to her by her aliases or her titles.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure none of her enemies know what her actual name is. They always
I think
just
the
refer to
enemies
her as
don't
the
even
devil
know
of
she's
the
a
Rhine.
child or a girl. So I think there's one point in volume 2 where I was wondering why they were referring her by a female pronoun, despite not knowing that she's a girl. I think that's a translation mistake, because Japanese doesn't have gender-specific pronouns.
Well, even the allies, you know, they refer to her by her call sign, and I don't know if she gives her name out to whoever she saves. So yeah, anybody around her won't really, you know. Obviously her troops know her name, you know, back home. But on the field, they don't use it. And so anybody that's kind of fighting with her, they might just know the call sign.
Like, they usually just refer to her as Major. They don't call her by her full name when they are talking to her on the battlefield.
Yeah, I think it's during the Northern campaign when she obliterates that command post. That's when the enemy intelligence officers refer to her by a female pronoun, despite not knowing that she's female. So that's probably a translation mistake.
Well, I mean, nonetheless, it's regardless. Again, like you said, I mean, we do have a divine entity involved in the series that alone could mean that everything is wiped away. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole kind of the whole mystery that we're building up to in the series, right? Because we know the war ends, and we know that at least a number of the countries survive or new countries rise, because again, we're having these news segments that make it seem pretty apparent that the world is now at peace. So all that stuff is kind of not really matters so much. It's the question of what happens to Tanya, what is going on with the whole Being X? What is that end game going to look like? Where is Being X going to be satisfied, right? So he's got this one girl who's screaming her praises to God as she rains death down on hundreds of people. But what is going to happen at the end? And is there a bigger plan in place that Being X is trying to do? Or is it just to make a point to one person? Or is there a bigger machination going on? There's so many different moving parts that this series could have that, yeah.
Can I ask about, I think it's Lugren. Is that the guy who's kind of he doesn't really trust Tanya? He knows there's something off with her.
Lurgan, yes.
Yeah, he's the guy who is shit scared of Tanya because he knows how terrifying she is.
Yeah, I think it's him later on. He hears, I think it's him. He hears the words total war and world war. I think it came from a report, and he's like, wait, I've heard these words before and I know them, but I don't know how I know them. Was that him that said that? And what's going on with that?
Not exactly. I think that's he gets the report where she's talking about total war, but the thing where he I think the thing you're thinking about is the Arsene campaign, the thing about making civilians into combatants.
Yeah, but I think, if I remember correctly, it's a bit later on. He reads a report, and later on, when he talks to Tanya, he kind of get the flash that, okay, it's her. She wrote that piece.
One thing about about Being X and his intentions that I didn't understand. Okay, of course it's necessary for the story, but he's supposed to bring Tanya to this world as a punishment, but he still gives her insane magical powers from the get-go. So why would he do that?
I think it would be because if he didn't give her anything, she would pretty much just die of malnutrition in that orphanage, and it really wouldn't accomplish much. He kind of just wants he gives her enough magical power where in this world where magical power is sought after and praised, where she gets noticed at a very young age, and the only and I kind of had this theory where since she when you see scenes in the anime of her childhood, she's living in a rundown orphanage that barely has enough money for food, which is why her growth is so stunted, and she's probably gonna stay like a lolly the rest of her life in that world. It almost seems like the Empire is kind of in a depression state, and the way she sees it is that the only way her best option out of that hellhole is through the military, and the being X sees it as like, oh, if I give her magical powers, then she's definitely gonna do well in the military, which is just could have put her in harm's way in the end anyway.
I don't think didn't see it so much as a punishment. I saw it more as being X trying to make a point and make an example of him. And I think that kind of and I think that's why there's that power, but the power must be given through praise. As being X is kind of like, see, given the right situation, you'll praise me.
And I think being X...
Yeah, that's later on. That's when she gets the orb.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that, but that's what I mean, though, right? Like, I'm saying that if you look at the machinations that being X is putting together, it doesn't really seem like it's so much that, well, I'm punishing you, per se, because I'm sure being X could come up with far worse punishments. But I think being X is kind of like, all right, so you say that you don't believe in God or you don't praise or you don't have faith because there's no war and no magic. Well, let's put you in a world where there is war and there is magic, and we'll see what your faith is like. And then I think that's part of the thing that being X starts interfering more and more, is because, oh, well, she's not really praying to me, so, oh, well, now let's deliver this orb thing. Now she has no choice.
Yeah, that's another thing. In the novel, he interferes way less than he does in the anime. I think in volume 2 he's almost non-existent.
Yeah, but I think in the anime it was more of a artistic decision. Like it's not really artistic, but more writing decision. It's more like when you bring when they bring existence X over and over, like it's to clarify him as the antagonist, like as the opposing force, versus in the book, like all of these gods, they serve a certain purpose, but not the same as in the anime. And also, like a theory I had, like it's that Tanya isn't chosen specifically for her well-being. It's not exactly all about her. It's about all of these other people in that world. Like in the first volume, all of these gods, they're trying to bring bad fate, not just for Tanya, but for everyone. And one of the thing that happened in history, like if we look at the religion, like they brought forth a devil to make people fear in not going down the right path, like not having faith. And I think that all of these gods, they're using Tanya as the default devil in that world. Like you're bringing down a monstrosity that has a lot more power and a lot more knowledge, and that's thrown in the front line. And that's basically my idea of where it's gonna go down. Like, is it gonna go that way or not? I'm not sure, but
yeah, I see where you're saying that providing a foil, providing something that people can look on in fear, and the only choice they might have is to turn to faith in order to protect them or to give them the right path to take. Or I could see it going that way. I think I kind of wonder if maybe, like, now I haven't seen the anime admittedly, but I wonder if, because there isn't all the internal monologue in the anime, because I mean there never is as much in an anime as there is in the book, I kind of wonder if that was why, being X, they wanted to make sure that they kept reminding you, hey, there's this antagonist, hey, Tanya's not really evil, take a look at the horrible thing this thing is doing, right? Just to give you...
That's what
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's definitely the anime. It was an artistic decision made to make sure that the audience remembers that there is something truly wicked, and that Tanya's just basically doing what she's got to do. And
Nutcrackers are scary.
All right. Well, you know what? I think we've had a really good conversation about Tanya the Evil, but it's been almost an hour and 45 minutes just for this part, not to mention 40 minutes of news.
I think I have one more small topic I wanted to mention.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Why not?
Really quick. Well, also, there's the thing we were talking about earlier with her identity not being revealed. I actually just remembered while we were talking about that they kind of do reveal who she is, because at the very end of Volume 2, if you've seen Episode 2 of the anime, there's a little side story that takes place like in the timeline right after she gets back from her first battle in Volume 1, where they dress her up in cute girl clothes and basically have a propaganda. They basically make a propaganda film with her where they pretty much reveal her name and that she just got awarded like a high-ranking honor in the military. So they kind of do give out her identity pretty early in the war.
Anime only, or is that in the book too?
That's in
No, that's a side. It's like a 5-page side story at the very end of the book.
Okay.
Like there's even one of the if you look at the colored illustrations of Volume 2, it's the second one where she's in like a red dress and she looks like really pissed off in the situation she's in. Yeah, but that was just one thing I wanted to like mention because I just remembered it. But the one thing the last topic I wanted to mention was the difference in art style from the books to the anime. If anyone had anything to talk about with that, because like I read a lot of light novels, but the artwork in the novels are probably like one of the best that I've been able to find, in my opinion. And the anime kind of changes the character designs, at least for Tanya and Visha, a lot. I don't know if any of you guys think it looks worse or looks better.
I thought the anime looked very good. I think it was the first anime the studio did, and so far I think the only one. I'm not quite sure what.
Well, the background in the anime was really nice. Like the characterization, like the character design was all right, but with all anime, like if you want to go with a limited budget, you have to simplify design. Like you cannot go with overly complicated design because it will take you forever. It would cost like too much. And I think that's why we got what we got.
I mean, in the novel you have half a dozen pictures, and of course you can splurge on that.
Well, yeah, but like there's some light novel series that have the same amount of illustrations per volume, but like some illustrations for some series don't look nearly as good. Like we're all fans of Don Machi, but I don't think I would really praise the illustrations in any of the Don Machi volumes, personally.
Well, for the anime, it was really kind of odd on how they chose to depart from the novels. And, some things was just like purely artistic, like the character designs for, especially for Visha and Tanya.
She looks like a fish.
I always thought she looked like a droopy dog.
Yeah, like in the novel, she looks like just a normal, like kind of like female soldier, but in the anime, she looks like her face is like really like droopy, and her eyes are like twice as big as they should be.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big controversy whenever the anime first came out, but something that Carlos Zen isn't really good at is kind of describing all the small intricacies of, say, like the uniforms of the weapons they're using, or even what the computation orbs look like. And so for the anime, they might not have focused as much on the character designs, but they focused a hell of a lot on like the backgrounds, the uniforms, the flags, the maps, environments.
Yeah, I will
that
say
was really good,
the
yes.
animation and the use of CGI in the anime is actually pretty damn good.
Yeah.
All the combat scenes were very well done for, especially as I said, for studios that hasn't done anything else before.
Yeah.
And I just looked through the pictures in the volume 2. I have to say I'm not that impressed by them. They're mostly black and white, and they look more like sketches than finished pictures.
I more like the character designs themselves, like for the covers and everything. If you're not aware and if you've only watched the anime, if you watch the ending song, those are all what the light novel illustrations look like.
So for most series, I prefer the light novel version over the anime version because you get more background. This is one of the few where I would say I prefer the anime because the pacing is so much better, and because the fight scenes are so good. Because in the light novel there are even some fights that are skipped altogether. So where they do everything from the planning up to the start of the fight, and then they skip to the end of the fight scene.
Well, I think we said that, I can't remember. It was another podcast, and we were talking about anime and the differences between anime and light novels. And that was one of the points we made, was that Tanya the Evil's anime seemed to focus a lot more on the action aspects and the antagonism between Being X and Tanya than the books, whereas the books seem to focus a lot more on the tactics and the reasoning behind the tactics than they do as the action.
You don't lose that in the anime. The anime also has the tactics and the reasonings, just not 3 or 4 times.
Fair enough. All right. Anything else before we wrap this one up? Okay.
Well, not for me.
All right. Okay.
Nope.
All right. So that will end our discussion on the Saga of Tanya the Evil for tonight. Now, our next episode, we're not too sure what we're doing.
Don't commit.
No.
Don't commit. No.
Yeah,
like,
probably the best.
Don't even mention
Well,
the next
It will
episode.
be a surprise.
well, let's just say that we're talking about trying to do something very different because, I think we're beyond our year anniversary now, but we've been around for about a year, so we thought let's do something maybe a little fun and different than what our usual is. We just haven't quite confirmed what fun and different is. So we'll come up with something. In any case, thank you very much for joining me tonight, gentlemen, especially Mirage, for altering all your sleep patterns and stuff to be with us. And to you, the listeners, as always, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Till then, bye-bye for now. For show notes and related links, visit lightnovelpodcast.com.